we're going to go ahead and get started with our meeting, and I want to thank everybody for coming today, particularly our esteemed guest. I do want to remind everybody that we record these meetings and then we post them on our website, which is great because we usually get more views on that than we do even in person. So that's really helpful. Um, we want to welcome our guests who are here tonight. We want to welcome our members, our board members. And without any further ado, Craig, I want to particularly be a good. Actually, Craig, I'm going to do something a little different tonight. Winter, I'm going to put you on spot. And I'm going to ask you to do your report first because there may be who knows, there may be some questions for the mayors that comes up. Winter is our board member, longtime board member, secretary, and she represents Strogue on the on David Finkley's short-term rental task force. And we're grateful to have her there doing that. Winter, can you give us a little update on anything that's going on there?
I can. I don't mean to disappoint truly, but I don't know that there's going to be enough of an update here that Craig's even going to have to be on the hot seat. So good news for you, Craig. Even though I've seen you on the hot seat, you perform. So I am on the task force. We there has been some movement and some conversation about what's going to happen in council. So the dialogue is basically about the city manning the 24-hour hotline, basically the 24 that where citizens can call in about short-term rental issues. So not has not been fully vetted or flushed out, but from the task force, basically they're investigating and figuring out what that could look like. Then there would be some type of enforcement that would be required, but that too is still being discussed. It sounds like there was going to be some conversation that was going to happen in August workshop. If it has happened already, I'm just not privy to it. But from the knowledge that I've gathered from the task force, it hadn't yet. Um, that's the primary basis, is that they want to the city the goal is that the city's going to take over these calls that are coming in and manage the enforcement of what needs to happen. That's the gist of what the task force has I should say has been working on, but truly it was kind of done uh, with the hurricane, with a variety of things. It was kind of done like behind the scenes. So they've asked for some feedback from the task force, and that's where we are.
Winter, I thank you so much for updating us on that. Has there been, and I believe Craig will probably speak to this as well. What I'm very happy about is instead of playing whack-a-mole when there becomes a hot button issue, they're looking at things in a comprehensive approach, which I think is good and it's organized. Can you think of anything else that's bubbling around, even if it's not moving on it, that would be worth reporting to the membership?
I mean, one of the primary things is, I guess, what does enforcement look like? Um, that's truly, if you're asking me my opinion, that's truly my concern, is what does enforcement look like? Because that could look like a variety of things, which includes, fines, removing license, someone being one of the key points is someone being there within 24, excuse me, within 1 hour. If there's a call, someone needs to be on site within 1 hour. And I have some pushback, not necessarily on the 1 hour, but there are instances where it doesn't make sense for me as a manager or me as an owner to show up. It
Well,
doesn't.
yeah, I mean, there need to be some common sense discussions about that. Well, for example, my short-term rental, during those torrential storms we had after Beryl, I had a failure of a windowsill, and my sweet little guest literally sent me a video of water pouring into my bathroom. And me driving there was going to not be much useful. Me getting Kenneth Gonzalez there, my contractor, was much more useful and important. And also, there's a lot of things around this. Example, if somebody makes a trash can complaint, I don't think that's um, warrants the same response at 2 o'clock in the morning as a noise complaint.
Very
So,
much so. So there's I mean, one of the examples is given was a domestic, like there was something going on with the rental related to a domestic. No one wants me showing up to a domestic. I don't want someone from my team showing up for a domestic. It doesn't make sense. So those are the pushbacks. Those are the conversations that's being had. And that, I mean, I'm sure that those are the pieces that come to mind, Anna. If there's something else that pops up, I'll wait until Craig's done and then I'll chime in. But those are really the biggest pieces in my mind.
Okay, fantastic. And guys, I want to set an expectation. We are so lucky and grateful to have the relationship with the city that we do. That Craig comes pretty much annually to visit with us, and he wants to hear from us. I'm so glad you guys are here to directly give the mayor feedback. So how this will do is he will present to us, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So we'll go from there. And I see we already have one. Let me just peek at that real quick. Winter and Craig, are either one of y'all prepared to speak to this question of how many complaints have there been this year? And I know there's some complications. So let me give an example. The very first opening weekend, one woman called about a trash can 5 times. So is that 5 complaints or is that 1 complaint? Are y'all able to speak to the volume? Maybe Craig, you might be able to, what kind of volume you guys are seeing compared to what you expected to see. I have heard the volume is lower than expected, which begs the question, does that mean people don't know the hotline is there? Are there not as many complaints as they thought? What does that mean? So would you mind incorporating your thoughts on that into your remarks, Craig?
By all means.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Anna. And for those that are in attendance, thanks for being here. What I'm going to do is go through the latest information at the city and at the council level and where we stand on short-term rental topics. This is very appropriate to speak tonight. I've visited with Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Finkley, and the park board today on this exact subject. Right now, the council is involved with budgets. And so all short-term rental talks are going to probably be put off until September, October. If I personally would like to start the short-term rental talks coming up in September, but it possibly could be October before we get into them. Let me say this, once we get through budget, short-term rentals is going to be the biggest topic. We have been getting a lot of input on short-term rental rules, regulations, where are we with things. So I'm going to give you an update. I'll try to go over this quickly and open it up because this is probably going to generate a lot of questions. Many months ago, and I say many months ago, probably 4 or 5 months ago, council charged staff to go ahead and put together a recommendations on the use of the short-term rental fees and how we're going to utilize those fees. We're going to raise about 1.2, 1.3 million annually based on the number of short-term rentals that are out there now. And so council wanted staff to look at this and give us a plan on how this funding is to be used. The staff has put that together. It is done. They haven't presented it to council as yet. That's what we'll do probably in September, as I mentioned, possibly October. They're going to look at a number of things. They're going to make recommendations on exactly the fee. It's $250 right now. So there'll be talk about, is that fee appropriate, too much, too little? Is that based how that fee is corresponding to what we're going to utilize it for? We're going to talk about where the registration for short-term rentals needs to be housed. Should it stay with the park board where it is now, or should it move to the city? And by the way, let me mention all that I'm going to mention to you tonight. None of this has been decided. council has not weighed in on any of this. So any of the things that I'll mention could change drastically once council weighs in on this topic. But one of the items is how is the registration going to be handled? It looks right now that there seems to be a movement at council to move that to the city. And that means the call center would move to the city, the registration, the collection of the hot tax through the registration process would move to the city also. That has pros and cons to it. I think some of the council members feel that the positive is if we're going to do enforcement of these issues, we have to have it at the city so we can coordinate it with GPD, we can coordinate it with the marshals, things like that. And it, in some council members' minds, it makes more sense to really be housed at the city. So that's one thing we're going to look at. Also, our city attorney has presented to council about 4 months ago a new ordinance concerning short-term rentals. And this ordinance was put together to address more of the registration enforcement issue. He did a preliminary draft and presented it to council about 3 months ago. It basically says that a couple of things. One is that we're gonna do away with registration of short-term rentals. We're gonna keep that same process, but we're gonna call it a permitting of short-term rentals. And because of that, then it gives the city the ability to legally enforce this. And the ordinance is keyed around if a short-term rental has a certain number of legitimate complaints within a certain time period, their permit is revoked. And that gives this ordinance change, allows the ability to have enforcement. According to legal right now, being a registration process, we don't have any enforcement powers when it comes to revoking a registration. That's something that we're going to discuss. Council really hadn't weighed in on that. The other thing is a portion of this is geared to responding in 1 hour. And there's going to be some fines involved in this ordinance if council accepts that, to respond with a fine if you don't respond in 1 hour. And also in this ordinance, there's a portion that fines and all of this will be levied to the property owner, not the people that are in the unit. This will go to the property owner. So those are some of the salient points of this new ordinance. I'm not sure council, how council is going to weigh on that. If you've been following this, I have council members that want more, far more authority over short-term rentals, and I have council members that want less. So we'll see how this plays out when it comes to council. Also, at that same meeting, I talked with Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Brown wants to establish a new short-term rental. And what he wants to do.
Craig, say that again, it glitched. A new short-term rental what, sir?
Yeah, and I'm getting feedback. Is somebody have, could
Ronald,
they mute?
Ronald, can you mute your microphone?
Oh, I can, but it's not me. That's all right.
Well, let's find out. That fixed it, at least on my end.
It fixed it on my end. That sounds good. So Councilmember Brown feels that we need to have a formal city committee to look at short-term rentals. I visited with him at length this afternoon or this morning. He is not sure. He's still working on his thoughts on that. He realizes that Councilman Finkley has a committee out there that has been working on this. And I talked with Councilmember Brown and asked him to talk with David Finkley. So he's going to be visiting with him on this. And I visited with Councilmember Finkley this afternoon on that. They are going to work on that. I told Councilmember Brown that in my mind, if we're having a short-term rental committee that's going to guide council, there needs to be only one. And so he's going to work with Councilman Finkley to see how they could maybe put their thoughts together and meld these committees together, or in some way establish just one committee. There's a subtle difference, but it's a major difference here. Councilmember Finkley's committee is not an official city committee. It's never been officially recognized by the city. That was done on purpose. Councilmember Finkley felt that getting things done, it might be a better approach to have this as a committee that he would personally put together and then bring back recommendations to council from that committee that he had put together. Councilmember Brown is thinking that this committee might be better served being an official committee of the city. Now, if that happens, the whole dynamics of this committee changes. Because if it's official committee of the city, then each city council member will have an appointment to that committee. And there could be other appointments or other participants of that committee, but that would be totally under the discretion and approval of city council. So as an example, we've done this, we've had some ad hoc committees before that were city committees, and each council member would make an appointment. That would be 7 members on that committee. And then if the committee felt in the short-term rental instance that there needed to be someone with legal expertise, if they felt that it needed to be someone from Strogue or wherever, council has the ability to add additional members to that committee, but that member has to be approved by council. So that changes the dynamics of the committee, and the council would establish the mission of the committee, and they would establish the timeline of the committee. So council, if it becomes an official committee, council would weigh in on what the mission would be, and then they would say, we would like a report back to the committee on X, Y, and Z in 3 months to council, and they would structure the timeline. So at this point, Bob Brown is working in his mind on the best way to approach this with input from Councilman Finkley, and that would be brought back to council. And if Bob continues to move in this direction, I told Bob that we would place it on the workshop to discuss this and see what council's thoughts are on that, probably at the same time that the city brings back their report on the use of the short-term rental fee. So that's where we are. Now, Councilman Brown's committee, in visiting with me, I think Councilman Brown wants to look more specifically at the possibility of more rules and regulations, and that what form they would take and so forth would come out of this committee. I think in talking with Councilman Brown, I think he would like to see that I just mentioned in the mission statement of the short-term rental committee. So that would be council's approval on that, and that would be up to council to approve whatever the mission statement is. It's going to be probably this fall, short-term rentals is going to be one of our main topics at council. I'm not sure how this is going to play out. And all of the thoughts I'm leaving you with could change drastically. It could be that Councilman Brown will bring his thoughts on forming a new committee that is city appointed, and it could be that council would not support that idea. It could be that council would say we would like to continue with Councilman Finkley's committee. but I got the feeling in talking to Bob Brown and David Finkley that they were going to work out possibly a mechanism of only having one committee to be involved here. Data requirements, you mentioned about data. The park board is collecting data, but we're not real sure how accurate that data is. And we do get a lot of, I haven't seen anything formally. I'm anecdotally getting input that the call center there at the park board gets complaints like their water doesn't work in the unit or something like that. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. If it moves to the city, we're going to do away with the call center the way it's structured at the park board. I would think council would then move in the direction that that call center would be the same dispatch process that you would call in for GPD or anything like that. I don't know that. That's something that council will have to weigh in on, but that is something that they would, I think that they would like to use, if I'm reading council well, use the existing systems that we have at the city to take complaints or calls concerning short-term rentals. And then the dispatcher would move that to GPD, move it to the marshals, whatever the case would be. When they come back and the city presents how the registration fee is going to be utilized, they are also going to, I think, make recommendations on if we hire extra marshals that are available 24/7, what the cost of those marshals would be, and so forth and so on. So that has a bearing on the registration fee itself. I have a lot more, but let me stop here and see if there's any questions.
Craig, I'd like to ask you a question about the idea of extra marshals and enforcement. All along, it's been said, so we pay, everybody you're looking at pays full taxes on our property. Nobody gets a homestead exemption on the short-term rental. So we're already paying 100% our fair share on taxes, which covers code enforcement, police, and all of the above. And what has been the theme up till now is we would only be surcharged for that if it was shown, documented, that our properties were generating extra additional service needs. And do you think that's still the understanding as you guys are looking at fees, that we're only going to get surcharged if it's shown that we are heavier users?
That's my stance on it. I've had that stance all the way along on this, but there are council members that don't look at it that way. The information that we're getting is all anecdotal information, and it is fueling some individuals' thoughts on how this should be pursued. In my opinion, we need to get accurate data before we move forward with any of these thoughts. I do think the new ordinance that legal has brought forward seems to have caught the attention of the vast majority of the council members, and they probably will make changes in it. But I think that ordinance of changing from a registration fee to a permitting fee or a licensing fee, as they call it, I think council seems to have a lot of support for that.
Can I follow up with that real quick? Did I hear correctly that I understand that as owners, we should be fined if we're not operating responsibly and all the above. When there are noise complaints and there are trash complaints, these are code compliance issues. Somebody gets a parking ticket, whatever. Did I hear you say that they want to charge the owners for all code compliance ticket violations? So somebody comes down to Galveston and they have a loud party or karaoke on the back porch, it's in excess of the noise violation. They want to ticket us for that as opposed to the person generating the noise?
Not necessarily on every complaint. Yeah, right now that's a topic still open to discussion with council. I do know that there are council members, though, on some of these, quote, legitimate complaints or whatever, that the property owner, they're thinking about holding them responsible.
Okay, I want to open the floor up. I don't want to take up all the question time. Guys, if you would like to ask a question, if you wouldn't mind unmuting your mic, and feel free.
You have to unmute, Ava.
Good evening, Mayor. I had a quick question. I am new to the Galveston community. I'm with Mrs. Donovan this evening, and kind of spent the weekend looking at some prospective short-term rental properties here on the island. And honestly, as someone who's looking to invest in the community, I'm kind of surprised at what I'm hearing a little bit, and I'm curious. I hear things like you've got council members that, I don't know, it kind of sounds like they want to attack short-term rental owners. And I'm just curious, in the history of Galveston, I'm from out of town, so I don't know. But you know, hotels are kind of the originators of short-term rentals. Apartments can be considered short-term rentals. And I'm curious, with those kinds of transient businesses, are you implementing these same kind of fees and structures? And I mean, it almost sounds like you're making an independent police task force to go after short-term rentals. So I'm curious, within the city limits of Galveston, are there police task force that are monitoring and monetizing what the hotel industry or the apartment industry, or shoot, even the vaping smoke shop industry is impacting the city of Galveston, its police force, and then contradicting that or projecting that against what they're paying in property taxes? Because when I buy an investment property, I am paying taxes on that property for police, fire, all those city services, even schools that you know, these short-term rentals aren't going to even utilize. And at the end of the day, there's just more fees, and it feels like a police state might be being orchestrated or identified to go after potential guests, which are predominantly here either to enjoy the beach for the weekend, or they're here to take advantage of a cruise industry. And you know, that's just going to rise costs. It's going to make the business unsustainable, and you actually may lose revenue by a bunch of sales of properties because people can't make money in Galveston. So I guess that's a two-part question. You know, what have you looked at with respect to these existing businesses that put a burden on the police versus and then you know, how is that being looked at against the short-term rental? And on the flip side to that, what's the long-term, they always call it the unintended consequence of actions like this. You know, it always sounds like a good idea. Hey, let's tax that business. That sounds great. Let's grow revenue there. And then you tax it and the business goes away and maybe 3 other businesses go away. So I appreciate the forum tonight. And as a potential investor in the community, I'm curious to hear your feedback on that, sir. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You know, let me say this. You've probably touched upon the foundational issue in some individuals' minds, how they look at short-term rentals. It becomes a philosophy of how you look at that, in my mind. Some people look at it that have talked with me that short-term rentals are a business operating in the neighborhoods, and that they should have, and they put, I'm not saying I agree with this, but this is what they're telling me, that short-term rentals put a strain on neighborhoods that a single-family homeowner would not. And therefore, the philosophy is that this individual industry needs to be addressed for rules and regulations to make it more appropriate for the community, and also to help regulate it and have rules that they enforce. The other flip side of that is that short-term rentals are just one industry that operates in this city. And why would you single out one industry to try to put all these rules and regulations when you don't do that on long-term rentals or other types of enterprises in the city. And as you know, if you've been following this, many cities in the United States are struggling with this issue. Arlington, Austin is putting in rules against short-term rentals. San Antonio, it's all over the nation. New York now has put in rules. It's almost impossible to have a short-term rental in New York. Each city, for some reason, is wrestling with this. And it seems like, from what I can see, that a majority of the cities, when this issue comes to discussion, that they move to the side of this is an industry that needs to have specific regulation. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that seems to be how things are moving in the country right now. And it does have ramifications. There's no doubt about this down the line. Right now, we have about, I got the figures, 4,400 maybe, or 4,500 short-term rentals. There's about 250, 300 out there that are registered with some platform but are not registered with the city. The park board is going after those right now. You know, there's 2,600 short-term rentals on the West End. District 2, where Ron's short-term rentals are, there's 850. That is the second highest, and that's quite a drop from the 2,600 out there. As you can imagine, District 6, this council member in District 6 has quite a different view on short-term rentals than the council member in District 4, where there's very few short-term rentals, or District 5. So it's a subject that council is going to have to put their thought to and see where we move on. But I hear what you're saying, and it's a philosophy that some people feel we should regulate, others feel that we shouldn't be in the regulation business. As an example, if we're going to put rules and regulations on short-term rentals, we need to do it on long-term rentals. Some people say that. So that's something we're going to have to discuss.
And
and-
may I ask a follow-up question, if you don't mind? I appreciate your response. That was great. One follow-up I kind of had in hearing what you just said, is the council looking at equity in the fees and the licenses? And what I mean by that is, you know, someone who's got a beach house and they're renting that house for $10,000 a week, who's likely gonna, you know, maybe it's a bunch of college students that rent it for a week or whatever. That's a different level of income and a different kind of customer versus what I was looking at doing, which is just a nightly rental out of my place that might just create some passive income of, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 a year kind of a thing. So is there any type of equity in property type or usage of the short-term rental that's being considered on any of these committees?
Yes, the council is discussing a registration fee, but what I've been hearing most from council is possibly a registration fee based on the number of bedrooms, where a 1-bedroom would have a far less fee than a 5 or 6 or 7-bedroom home.
A follow-up question on that. They brought up a really good point. So there is an expense on top of there being a benefit. There's an expense having tourists on the island. I hope we're also looking at how we can evenly share the burden of those expenses with attractions who bring a lot of tourists on the island. The Bryan Museum, the Pleasure Pier. There's many other places, and hotels. I still don't understand why hotels aren't permitted as well. I think that if the whole point is to offset expenses, that they generate expenses as well just by the fact they exist. And I feel like they should be permitted too.
That's, you know, that's goes back. Yeah. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, um, you know, it's all of these questions that we're going to have to sort through on this. And uh, if the committee, if the formal city committee takes legs and Councilmember Brown is going to present his thoughts, I think, on that. He's still working it out. But if that is something that council wants to move forward with, this is going to be a topic that committee is going to have to deal with.
I would counsel, with all due respect, Councilmember Brown has been on the council now for a matter of months. David Finkley has been working at this for years. And I think that you have an existing, well-functioning committee with a wonderful array of stakeholders. And I'm going to be blunt. I think it's disrespectful for a brand new council member to come in and go, get out of the way. I have my idea. This is how we should do it. I hope that he will partner with the existing council member who's put years worth of work into this. And that's a little strong, but it's how I feel. Let's open up to other questions. If you could raise your hand so we're not over speaking each other. Who else has some questions for Mayor Brown? Well, I don't see any others, so I'll just keep on with my list. Oh, Barbara, thank you. Barbara, you're muted, love.
I'm trying, okay. So we have this computer program that was created. How effective has it been? You talked about they were looking at 250 unregistered Airbnbs are being gone after. So how effective is this $500,000 computer program that we paid for? How effective has it been?
You know, Barbara, I can't really answer that objectively because I just don't know. We're going to delve into that. I would say what I'm hearing is in some aspects, this computer program has been a godsend. That the computer program is scraping all these platform sites. They're constantly monitoring this and coming up with those 250 that are unregistered. They seem to be extremely good at that and know which ones are out there. And they're running through a lot of sites. They're just not on VRBO and Airbnb. They're running quite a few sites that they're looking at. And so I think that's been very, very effective. The call center, I'm not sure how effective that has been in collecting objective data, but I'm not sure how the call center is the relationship with that in the software program. I'm not real sure on this. This was something that the park board, and they had by the way, as you know, they had a short-term rental task force that brought this software on board. It was Claire and Mary and a group of people that evaluated this software.
So I have a follow-up question to that. Oh, now I forgot what it was.
Barbara, while you're thinking of that, I actually asked this question over at the park board this week. Ronald, please correct me if I'm wrong here. We went from the mid 80 percentile to the mid 90th percentile. So it's been a 10% jump in registered properties. And I think that's a good thing. If we're required to register, I want to compete against registered properties.
I remember now. So we have Airbnb and VRBO and other platforms that are paying our taxes for us because we're registered with them. We have this computer program that's monitoring everything. Why do we have to still fill out the forms every 3 months that say that we owe nothing? I don't understand. You still have to file, the state does not require it because the taxes are being paid automatically. But yet the city, we have to still fill out the forms. That is a redundancy 3 times now.
I can't answer that, Barbara. I have no idea. I didn't even know you had to do that. So
Yes.
It's some, I don't know if that is a city rule, if it's a park board rule, or if it's a state rule. I don't know.
It's in the city ordinance, Craig. It's in the LDRs. So that's something that probably could be looked at during this process is
Sure.
the benefit versus the workload on us when we're not even in, unless you rent individually, you're not even in the chain anymore.
I would say too, coming back to Councilmember Brown, he has talked with me about one of the concerns he has is about parking requirements for short-term rentals. And I'm not sure where that is heading. He's going to be talking with city staff to try to work out some approach for the management of short-term rental parking. He's visited with me a little bit on that. I'm not sure even what the alternatives are on how we could address that. We're still at the infancy stage on that.
Well, Craig, that's a real hot button issue because there are a lot of owners that will put, if the ordinance as written with no grandfathering, which when it happened, we were told we would be grandfathered. If it's enforced as written, you have people in here who have invested a lot of money who will have to shut down their short-term rentals. I have this historic home. I couldn't add parking if I wanted to. And the other problem, as you guys have tackled parking, the only opportunity you have to do that is through the permits. So the people who are in unpermitted areas, it doesn't affect them. It's unenforceable. I would urge you guys as you're looking at which ordinances to keep, add, get rid of, really think about what enforcement looks like. Because an unenforceable ordinance is a waste of everybody's time and effort.
Yeah, and the parking, when I say Councilmember Brown's looking at that, it may not be off-street parking. It may be some type of permitting and having a pass or something type process for short-term rentals.
And we are, well, but I would urge you and him, code compliance is not really a short-term rental issue. If there are too many cars being generated by a house, nobody cares which house that is. If there's a dog barking its head off, I don't care whose dog. I need that noise dealt with. I want to make sure that our rights as property owners to have be at our homes and have visitors at our homes are respected the same as every other homeowner in Galveston. We should be not held to any higher bar nor lower bar. We should be at the same bar.
I know around me where I live, I have some short-term rentals. The parking issue is not a concern. Our concerns around here in the blocks around me are the single-family homes. We've got one down the street that it must have 8 or more cars associated with a very medium-sized single-family home.
Wow. Well, and I appreciate you've always been a very level-headed advocate because this is a cycle we go through that somebody comes on council and gets very excited about stuff, and then they learn the history, and I appreciate how you've been a good advocate. Ronald, your hand's up.
Yeah, I want to comment on parking. And my comment is, it's not just short-term rentals. If they're going to do something with my parking, with my short-term rental, I'm going to give some for instances. And not that I'm against or for these businesses, it's just that it's all in the same boat. For instance, Shy Cat Restaurant has no public parking. It's street parking, and there are houses all around there. Just an example. So how do you regulate that when people go to Shy Cats and they park in front of someone's house? The Cordray drugstore has no public parking. It's street parking only. And those customers also park in front of houses. Now, I'm not saying good or bad about those businesses, because I love both of them. My only comment is, it's not just short-term rentals. We're an island, and parking is an issue, always has been, and always going to be. I just have a problem at the finger always being pointed at short-term rentals. That finger needs to be pointed at everyone on the island, not just us. So keep that in mind because it will come up. And those are just two examples off the top of my head. I can talk to you about my personal, what I have heard about Hotel Lucine. You know, on the weekends, they are starting to have a band on the roof. I think it's a great job, a great idea. I haven't been to it, don't know what's happening, but I have heard things like, so where are people going to park? Well, they're going to park in the neighborhood behind Hotel Lucine. How about the noise at night? Who's going to hear that? The neighbors behind.
Like I said.
So, you know, people always seem to have a problem pointing at short-term rentals with these, but they don't have a problem pointing at other businesses. There's some inequity, and that's something I think that needs to be looked at very carefully. And I have one more real quick thing about inequity with the gentleman who was talking before. You know, my short-term rental on 14th Street has been in business for about 15 or about 20 years, I guess. I have never, ever had police called, code enforcement called, ever an issue. But yet I'm going to be charged or have a registration a higher fee to cover police or code enforcement. I just find that strange. I know for a fact that hotels have issues. Now, the argument on that is they have their own security, and I understand they do. But that doesn't mean those issues that they have do not require code enforcement or police to go and take care of some of those issues. But yet they're not being charged a registration fee either. So there's some inequities that need to be looked at, especially if you're looking at money. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Surely.
Ronald,
Yeah,
you brought something
just-
up. Oh, go ahead.
Just a thought about parking, not so much with short-term rentals. I don't know if you've ever thought about it. The new movement in urban planning now, and Austin is doing this, is they're doing away with parking requirements in general. If you open a business, a hotel or whatever, a restaurant, there is no requirements for parking. And the reason they're doing that is they're forcing people to take mass transit or Uber. We were in Austin not too long ago, made reservations in a restaurant. The restaurant said, they took our reservation and they said, we want you to know there is no parking anywhere near us. So if you want to come to this restaurant, you got to Uber, have a friend bring you, or take mass transit. And that restaurant was packed. So it's interesting. Austin seems to be heading that way and doing away with all parking requirements.
Craig, Winder, please go ahead.
And I don't know that it's a full question. The thing that it's probably more of a comment. And I don't know how we push the council to look at data. One of the notes that I've taken, Craig, is that it seems very anecdotal. I'm on the task force. I was the person assigned to go through the calls to say how many calls have come in. There is some flaws in the way that data is being collected from the call center. Not going to deny that. I mean, I was going call by call, trying to sort, okay, so this person has called 5 times about this address and trying to bucket them. But overall, looking at the number of calls at the data set that I looked at, we do not have the problem we think we have based on the data. And for me, the issue that I have is that this is all anecdotal and they're consistently, no one's saying we've gotten, for example, 1,000 calls, 50% are from short-term rentals. That's based in the following 5 issues. It's not based that way. It's we think that this is a problem. I personally, potentially as a council member, don't like it, or my constituents tell me they don't like it. So I'm going to do the following. And that's not the way any city should be run.
Yeah, and Winter, I would agree with you on that. I don't think the concerns are as much as people make them out to be. And that's why personally, I think we've got to get the data before we start shotgunning all these rules and regulations. Even if council wanted to have rules and regulations, we've got to get the data to know where we stand with that. I'm getting, you know, I tell council all the time, I don't see that as a problem with short-term rentals in District 2 as other districts are telling me there is. But, you know, we don't have the data, and we need to get that.
Craig, to jump onto something Ronald said about parking, the current system where we get stickers for our cars and then we get guest passes, which are copied throughout the East End. I've never done it. I won't do it. A lot of my neighbors do it. We all know it happens. It's really not a good system. There used to be an app that Ronald had when I used to own a house across the street from him, that it was app based. So we had a guest coming in personally, our short term rental. You put their license plate number and you put the dates. You can't copy that. I'm only allowed 4 or I'm allowed 3 based on whatever. That was back when Michael Gray was the city marshal, and then that went away. And we have these passes now that are being copied. And then biker weekend, I'm not putting a $500 piece of paper on a motorcycle outside that or 2 to make it even better. And basically, I've literally been told, well, that's a you problem. I'd like to see council be a little more proactive about a reasonable solution. And the wonderful thing is, if it's app based, I mean, paper's weird. It's 2024. You know, let us get our registration done. Maybe we have to provide the proof that we have these cards once a year electronically. But it really should be app based, and perhaps there's a paper option for people who can't do apps. But I'd love to see the city go back to that very effective system that you can't cheat.
I'm making notes on these items as everybody brings them up, and I'll follow up on those and of course bring those to council.
Thank you, sir.
By all means.
All right, we're going along. Any other questions? Gina.
I just have, it's kind of a question, but sort of a comment too, because I missed the beginning. I apologize, but I did hear Craig say when I came in about how they're thinking about changing the registration fee to be more based on number of bedrooms or size of the rental, which makes a ton of sense, I think, personally. But I just wanted to understand where that is headed still, because I know last time when they changed the registration fee, to my understanding, there wasn't a well, as Winter was saying, talking about data, there wasn't a budget set out to show exactly where all of the money, all this extra money was going to go and how it was going to be used.
Turn the camera on.
So that's kind of just my concern with changing it again. And also my assumption would be that the current registration would not be the bottom, that we would be going down from the 250 for some of the smaller rentals and maybe up from the 250 for larger rentals. But that's just a thought process. And then if the budget is currently correct, then we would use the total amount to make that new budget. But anyway, just kind of more of a question as to how you're thinking about doing that. Maybe I'm not sure.
Well, the budget, we may have missed that, as you mentioned at the beginning. We're going to be presented a budget coming up, I think, in September to discuss the use of these registration fees. And so we'll see how that, I'm kind of anxious to see what's coming. The registration fee right now is the software management and maintenance. That's coming out of the registration fee. What's coming out of the registration fee also is the audits, the hot tax audits is coming out of the registration fee. And what's coming out of the registration fee is the personnel at the park board that manages the registration process and all of that. So that's coming out of the fees right now. I'm not sure what all those are. I'm hearing rumors that it's going to be that of the 1.2, that you could probably make a case for 600 to 800,000 of that being utilized. I don't know. I haven't seen it. We'll know in September on that.
Okay.
Craig, to follow up on her, that's something we've consistently heard from our members is when the fee does get adjusted, we would love to have a budget with it that we can understand, that we can go, all right, so we see what this is tied to. Lynn, I see you've unmuted. Do you have a question?
I did. Mayor, good evening. Lynn Donovan
Hi.
here. So I'm kind of, unless I forget what happened last time I met with you at short-term rental. At that time, we were talking about, the excess amount from the fees as what was budgeted or used that year. There was a considerable amount of money left over. I never really did find out whatever would happen to that or how that was used, but I guess we'll have another year of that. But I kind of feel like we are like the scapegoats in the community, because over here, where the area where I'm at, there are 4 short-term rentals in, a square block area. Okay. To my knowledge, none of them have had problem or been reported. Yet there are probably in that same block area, and Mayor, we met about this before, 12 scattered housing homes or Section 8 housing. And there have been numerous police calls to these properties over and over again, even a shooting, for God's sake. So, I don't know how we talked about data a year ago or 2 years ago when you came to the meeting over there at the restaurant. I don't know what it takes, but I really feel like we are the scapegoats and the cash cow for the city. Unjustly, really. I mean, I know that there are some problems in various places, but there's other entities on this island that honestly, at least where my property is, create a major nuisance. And they're not paying a registration fee. Their landlords aren't paying a registration fee. And in fact, my tax dollars are paying their rent, for God's sake.
I hear what you're saying, Lynn. No, and just a side comment, Section 8 housing, the city has no input whatsoever to. It's a federal HUD program that Galveston Housing Authority, they manage it, and the city has no authority over that whatsoever. So
All right, guys, Craig has been on the hot seat now for almost a solid hour, and we are so grateful to him. I'm going to open the floor for one last question if anybody has one. Seeing none, Craig, I think that I do want to note while we're talking about all of this that our success has or lack thereof has an impact on the city. And it's my understanding HOT taxes this summer are down about 4%. And so as you have council members looking for more ways to get tourists off the island, you might want to ask them to brainstorm how they would like to make up that part of the budget.
I will, and I wanted to thank you and Strobe for your time tonight. I really appreciate that. I make notes. I hear where you're coming from on this. If you follow me through the elections, I'm pretty well the thoughts that you're giving on your concerns with some of these changes. I have the same concerns on this. It's something that concerns me, and we'll see how this plays out. As we move through this, though, feel free to make sure you get your voice heard. And you will, I know, but feel free to contact these council members. I'm always open to get your input on this, and let's see if we can make sure Strogue, in the way that we manage short-term rentals today, in my opinion, has been pretty darn good. We have issues here and there, and we need to address those and get the data to address those. But we're managing this situation fairly well. When you look at the number of short-term rentals per capita, we have quite a few here. And so we need to continue to work together. And I think we've had the success so far because we have it together.
I 100% agree. Thank you so much, Craig, for meeting with us. You are welcome to stay, but you are also welcome to go do something more relaxing with your evening.
I'm going to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. All right, guys, it is already a little after 8, so we're going to zoom through the rest of this, all puns intended. We'll real quick do the president's report. Just a reminder, the stroke schedule for the rest of the year is on the website. If anybody's wondering when the meetings are, I want to highlight one of our members, Sandra Oxman, was featured in Galveston Monthly. So I love that. I love seeing stroke properties given their due. I wanted to bring to y'all's attention, I'm missing an email out about this. My husband's a lawyer, and he sent me something this week. You know, just when you think you have your short-term rental contract high and tight and covering everything, some new craziness comes along. There was a short-term rental owner hit with a $1,500 electrical bill. And not because CenterPoint was trying to take advantage of you, but what they found out looking at their cameras was that their guest had done cryptocurrency mining, brought in a ton of computers into their short-term rental and used their electricity for whatever time period. So I just want people to be aware that's a thing that could happen to you. I'm going to be adjusting our house rules and contract to say no cryptocurrency mining. And yeah, it's just, you never know what's going to come up. Advocacy. Ronald, are you still here?
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about, one of the big things we do is advocacy. Ron and I met with the park board this week based on some comments we've heard from some of our members. Barbara, you're one of them. And we have felt this as well. So when we see like, hey, look what everything HOT is doing for this island, the hotels and everybody else. I'm like, I would really like when you say that, to say hotels, short-term rentals, and then you can add everybody else if you want to. But if we're gonna I would like you to either say lodging, because we all fall under that, or if we're gonna specifically call out somebody for those benefits, then let's go ahead and call out hotels and short-term rentals, because there's times where we create more HOT taxes than they do. And it was a really good meeting. It was long overdue, and we're gonna start doing it more often. They took our point, it was noted. We also said that we would love to partner with the Visit Galveston on education. So when they do the tourism summit, we think it'd be a great idea to have a breakout session that is short-term rentals 101, because there's so many new people coming into the business every year. And invite all of our members to come to it as well for an educational component to help people get off to a good start on running a responsible short-term rental. Often I find people get in trouble because they're just not aware of the pitfalls, they're not aware of the regulations and all of the above. Ronald, so we talked about that. We talked about if you go look on Visit Galveston, which is outward facing to guests, east of 61st, there's 2 short-term rentals listed. I can look at this entire room and know mine's not listed, and I've turned the paperwork in. They're aware of that. The website's getting ready to go through a big rework. But we need to get people's short-term rentals listed. We're already paying for it. There are HOT taxes. If you haven't submitted yours, please do. And we're going to be putting a big push on people getting their stuff in and getting those properties listed. We're also going to be, the park board, we've asked so we can partner with them on best practices. If we could cross-link the websites, where when you go to the park board and you're looking for an organization of short-term rentals, you'll find us, you'll find GARM. And I think that they're amenable to doing that. And that, oh, by the way, the short-term one-on-one would be in conjunction with GARM if they're agreeable to do it, which I'm certain they would be. Um, Vice President, do you have anything for the meeting?
Yeah, just a couple things. So renewals were in April. We still have quite a few members who've not submitted their renewals. I'm sure, summer has been crazy and all that, whatever. So if you have not renewed, please do that. Submit your application and make sure it says renewal, and then you can pay through Zelle, PayPal, or a check. Also, we need members to go to our website and check their listings and see if everything is updated. We have members who have changed from VRBO to Airbnb, and they have not told us, and so they're not getting that information to their guests. So, it's up to you to please go and look at that. I think that's it. Are you going to talk about the roundtable?
Yeah, but hold on, two things. Ronald, really good point about checking your listing for accuracy. If your listing says more information soon, that means your link is broken. So people are going to click that and it's going nowhere. They're just getting a picture of your house. So we can only put up there the information we're given. So please check your listing. Well, let's couple roundtable with elections.
Yeah.
Barbara, you have a question, love.
So how much traffic does anybody see on for their property from that site anyway?
I can ask Squarespace to go to look at that. I've never checked the traffic on it. But I can find that out for you.
It's because, I just feel like they have just taken our money and we're getting nothing.
Oh, do you mean the park board website or the Visit
Right.
Galveston website?
Yeah.
Well, that's, they get a lot of visitors. And my thing is, I just really realized that our short-term rentals are not showing up there. What I don't know is it because people haven't submitted them? Or is it because, like me, it's been submitted and hasn't shown up? Either way, it needs to be fixed. Because
they're on their homepage. They have the names of the hotels are right there. You can click on their hotels and go right to their websites. We are funding this and we are getting nothing.
we had a discussion about the fact there is a hotelier is the first thing. That is a bought ad. And I'm like, I understand that. Then when you go into the short-term rentals, it's segregated off into management companies and individuals, and we are tucked underneath the management company. And I'm like, well, first off, that's meant for visitors. Their visitors aren't, I mean, yes, put us on there as a organization that has responsible owners, but we should really be over on the park board website because we're owner to owners is what we are. We had a lengthy discussion about some stuff on the website that did not make sense. One of my problems, I'll be very honest, and I have a lot of respect for property managers. When you go look on their website, it says owners, and then it's very small. Then it's managers, and then there's all these basically benefits of managers, one of which is a properly, regularly cleaned property. And I'm like, so the implication is that you're going to be in a cleaner house, which no, our homes are properly and regularly and professionally cleaned. So I've asked that all to be cleaned up. I don't understand why you don't have just one section of short-term rentals. You can denote the manager on there, but there shouldn't be two categories, two classes, and they shouldn't be promoting either individually owned or management owned one over the other. Does anybody disagree with that?
I do not disagree, and let's be clear, to get listed as a management company was basically an act of Congress. So there were select ones that were picked, and I have an office on the island because I was told I couldn't be listed there because I didn't have an office.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Well, as a reminder, I'm good. So,
and I mean, I went and got an office, just a space, because that's what the feedback was.
When you look at the management companies listed, the third one is Beachbox, and I want to be very polite here. I'm a professional. But they have been a huge source of complaints on the island, and their complaints have wash over on all of us. So there was a discussion about that, and because they're a government entity, they can't play favorites. So yeah, so your comment is super interesting. Winter, we should probably talk some more. So thank you for letting me know that. Please go look on the website. Barbara, you're really good at this. Everybody go look on the website, because I'm going to be reaching out, making some very specific suggestions. I would love to have y'all's eyes on there also. Remember, that website is for guests. The ones that are for owners should be, I've also told them you should really have a central location, probably on the park board website, where an owner can go, new, experienced, whatever, that's like, all right, here's the information on registration, here's where you can go on best practices, here's the good neighbor brochure, here's a link to all the ordinances that you have to follow. Make it easy. Right now, there are far too many places for a new owner to have to go and figure out how to properly operate a short-term rental in Galveston. Okay, circling back around, we have had a board member resign. Vonda Tackett, after many years of good and faithful service, has left the short-term rental industry. She sold her property management business and she is out. So understandably, she's no longer serving on the board. It was a big loss. And one of the biggest losses is she's the one who is the spearhead behind the round tables, which have been very well received, particularly because our general meetings are split between Zoom and in person, and we use those to fill in that void as well for people who want to meet in person. I spoke with Ronald, and as vice president, he's agreed to take over the responsibility for the roundtables. And I'm deeply grateful for that, because that's how they can continue. Somebody's willing to take them on. So we have a vacancy on the board, and we also have elections coming up very soon here. Put a pin in that for a second. I want to do things a little bit differently this year. What we've traditionally done is put the call out, people self-nominate, we put a little blurb, some people submit them, some people don't, we vote. I'd like to go a little deeper on this, and in our next meeting in October, we'll put the call out earlier, and the next October meeting, anybody interested in serving on the board can come address the meeting. And it'll be recorded for everybody to see, and talk about their vision for serving on the board and how they'd like to impact. The other thing that we would like to do, and we will vote on this at the October meeting, we have a 7-person board. It was just sort of a number. You have to have an odd number. It's a number we just picked out at the beginning. We are finding that probably a 5-person board would properly serve this organization. We know one of our board members is not going to run for re-election, and we have one board member who's already resigned. So you as the membership will be asked to consider, this seems like a natural time to go ahead and reduce the board down to 5. I want to remind everybody, no matter who chooses to run or not, all 5 of these positions are up and open every single election. I would urge anybody who's interested to run for the board. We would, I think that the competition makes for a good board. So we've got that. Treasurer's report. Our treasurer, unfortunately, is conflicted with her Meet the Teachers Night. On hand, we have $7,382. And I don't believe we have any outstanding bills right now. At this point, I'd like to open up the meeting to see if there's any other business people would like to bring up. Hearing no other business, our next meeting will be an in-person meeting in October, and I look forward to it. It's been a little while since we've met. The candidate forum added another Zoom meeting this year. All right, at this point, do we have a motion to close this meeting? David moved. Any second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronald. Leanne, sorry, I couldn't get to it fast enough. All right, all in favor of closing the meeting? All opposed? Guys, we're closing the meeting. I want to thank each one of you for coming here tonight and for posing your questions. Just even if you didn't ask a question, your presence here gives value and weight when Craig is in the room and we're asking these things. Keep asking the tough questions. I think that I think we have a great ally in Craig, but we need to make sure our voices are heard across the board. So thank you guys so much for coming tonight.